Greetings everyone, my name is Greg. In this video, I am going to talk about the benefits of being positive and the cost of being negative. This is a follow-up video to my video Positive versus Negative Hypothesis. And I'm doing this one because it was requested that I elaborate on some things, and I'll be doing that in this. There's also something that I want to read because I do feel that it is important in the discussion of the cost of being negative and the benefits of being positive. But before I get into that, I do want to mention one thing. Because in my bit of research on this, I came across an idea of what is called toxic positivity. And I had a bit of, what the hell is that? Because there is clearly people that are toxic and toxic relationships, but those are negative. And they're centered around negative behaviors like worry, blame, anger, so forth. But the idea of toxic positivity, I was like, it almost seemed like an oxymoron. And when I looked into it, it was basically the idea of being positive at all costs, which I was like, okay, they're talking about basically putting on a face and making yourself act like you're positive when really your emotions are negative. I think that would ultimately backfire, because if the aspect of emotional vibration would be true, and I have my skepticism regarding it, which I'll get into in a minute, but if the idea of emotional vibration would be accurate, then what you're feeling would basically determine what level you would be emotionally vibrating at. The fact that you would be trying to conceal it to other people and put on a face, that would not change the emotional vibrational frequency that you would be at. Because basically you can't trick your body. Not in that regard. Now, it is true, the idea of being depressed, you have to have your body in a certain position. Like, it is impossible to be depressed with a big stupid smile on your face. Your body has to look a certain way in order to really feel the emotions of depression. But the idea that it would still be there even if if you're doing something silly like that, you're not going to be depressed because you're intentionally doing something to change your emotional state. But the trouble or the problem with that would be trying to maintain it. And what I would contend is you wouldn't be able to in the long term. That your true feelings would eventually come out. But I wanted to start this with a picture that I had in the other video, and I want to point out again the issue I have with this picture, and it's a bit of a minor detail or a bit of me being a nitpicky that I want to address, and that is number 4 on the upward spiral, positive expectation and belief. Positive expectation is all well and good, but I would contend be realistic. because you can have a positive expectation of winning the lottery. It doesn't improve your chances of winning the lottery. And belief in something doesn't mean what you're believing in is true. People have all kinds of negative beliefs and even disempowering beliefs. Belief by itself doesn't mean anything, and the idea of positive expectation belief, in putting belief with positive expectation, again, anytime somebody buys a lottery ticket, they are positively expecting that they're going to win. But logically, realistically, you're going to lose. The odds are you're going to lose. Not everybody can win. That's basically going against the nature of the lottery. So just because you can positively have an expectation and a belief about something, it does not mean it's going to happen or that it is a true belief. That is where I would say your beliefs should be based on what you can prove. But I'm also an atheist. I don't believe that belief is a choice. And it might be better to say that as I do not feel that belief is a choice. I feel belief is a compulsion based on evidence. That it's not a matter of do you choose to believe something, but rather are you compelled to by the overwhelming evidence presented to you. And what I contend we all do is we're compelled to believe something because of the evidence around us. Like using the aspect of driving, do you believe the light is red? Or do you judge it by accurately looking at the situation around you and acknowledging the reality of the light being red, which means you have to stop. Otherwise, you're risking not just your life and your safety, but everybody else in that intersection at that time. Your beliefs can't differ in that situation from everybody else, or there's going to be a big problem. But one of the things that somebody had shared in that last video that I really feel is worth repeating in this one because it does directly tie into it is this comment. There is a guy I work with who plainly had a horrible upbringing. When he talks about it, it borders on cringe, and I am assuming here that what this person means is it borders on being cringeworthy. But getting back to this, the lifelong effects of emotional and physical abuse are very real, and I agree completely. He's basically a good guy, comes off that way anyhow, but sometimes being around him all day is exhausting. When I come home, I'm ready to come home. That being said, I think due to what's been inured into him, I feel he also attracts bad circumstances. Literally everything in his life is an uphill battle. His neighbors, his relatives, most of the people he has worked with, strangers on the street, can that many people about the same be on the same page? I think he subconsciously invites it. I'm going to address this after I get done reading all of it. Another guy, same workplace, who left the job last year for another job, made a difference in the morale of the place when he left. We were all laid off for 2 months during the start of the pandemic, and this guy left this job a month or so after we came back. The abused guy came back to work right after that, and he said the whole atmosphere had changed in the other guy's absence, night and day. But negativity still follows him around. So, yeah, a negative person can have a huge influence on others. This could be nonsense, but I believe everything has a balance and tries to keep it. If you blow up a balloon, the pressurized air wants to escape and will retain that pressure until the balloon deflates. You do something bad to somebody, you have thrown things out of balance, and it remains out of balance until something rights it. Negative energy is destructive and throws the balance off, and it often remains that way, but always tries to right itself nonetheless. A tension headache hurts until something eases the tension. The balance in that area has been restored. I think this applies to everything, and I would agree with that. One thing that I do want to say about the beginning of that with the person that it seems they invite negativity. I know people like what is being talked about in this. And yes, it does seem that whether consciously or subconsciously, there are some people that seemingly invite chaos, disorder, even drama. I don't know if it is intentional with the person, if they are intentionally, to use the term like a drama queen or a drama king. But there are people that definitely radiate a drama aspect, as well as people that when they're in a workplace. Now, I'm not sure if with the second guy, if what he was saying was that the person was so negative that when they left, the morale changed for the better, or if the person was very positive and the morale changed and it dropped radically. I don't know because it doesn't really specify which. I would almost tend to think because of the idea of negativity can follow someone around and that it does affect the atmosphere, that the second story was a very negative person left and that the atmosphere improved in their absence. But it could go either way. The atmosphere of somewhere could radically improve if somebody negative leaves, or if somebody that is very positive leaves, it could plummet in the absence of them. So there's really, it can go either way in that one. But yes, I definitely agree with the overall sentiment that was being expressed, and it was something that he had started it off with long reply, I know, but why not? And I agree, because what he shared was very pertinent to that video and even to this one, maybe even more so to this one, because I'm specifically going into the idea of, as I had said, the cost of being negative and the benefits of being positive. Now, one of the things I want to draw to your attention is this picture that I had called bullshit on, and you can see I wrote that on the picture because that is really what I feel this is. And I think this particular picture underneath the bullshit was written by a feminist, because the idea that females are one octave higher than male tones, I see no evidence to support that hypothesis. Absolutely none. In all of the research I have done, and I will show you different charts and so forth, none of them specify gender as being anything in this. It is all, if you want to say, frame of mind or mood, the way you're thinking, not your gender. Because growing up, my mom was very negative, and I don't think it was her intention. One of the things I want to point out here, I considered whether or not to talk about my childhood, and I figure, why the hell not? My mom was very verbally abusive. Not all the time, just when she lost her temper. I have the same ability. It's learned behavior. And I found out after she had died that her father, who was a Lutheran minister, was the same way. And I guess from what I've heard, although I never met him, he died before I was born, which is something I'll be getting into. Apparently, he was not just verbally abusive, but physically. And I did not hear over the years anything of sexual abuse or any of that, but verbal abuse, and it can even be called emotional abuse, is very traumatizing to a child. And it will have very negative effects. The thing is, there's this one that I also call bullshit on, because the big thing is and I left whoever claims a copyright on this, the fall back up, I don't know what that is, never heard of it, but I left that in there so if any of you do come across anything from that either organization or whatnot, beware. Because the idea of listening to a particular frequency during a meditation will do something like, I seriously question that. I am very skeptical. Being a skeptic is, I feel it is a good thing. That it is not something, skepticism is not something to be embarrassed about or ashamed of, because it really means you're looking at things in a more realistic manner. But I question claims and look for evidence regarding, especially like 528 hertz repairs DNA. If that would be true, why aren't hospitals using this? And other things like the connect with light and spirit. Well, for one, light in the sense that they are using it here, I question whether it exists, because it is relating to this spirit thing, which I would seriously question. What is it? And then, does it exist? Because in order to say you can connect with something, you first have to be able not only to define what you're trying to connect to, like someone saying that they connect with a god. Well, first you have to define what you mean by a god, and then demonstrate how you're connecting to this. And it would benefit you if you're presenting this argument to somebody that is familiar with what are the logical fallacies. Because a lot of times when people try to put forward so-called evidence for either connecting to a god or connecting to some spirit thing, they're engaging in one logical fallacy or another, or they're not constructing their argument in a sound way. That their premise from the start is flawed. And if your premise is flawed in your argument will never make sense. It'll always end up being a logical fallacy of some kind. But then there is this idea that I don't have as big problems with this one as I do. I question force and power being where they are, but it could be because I don't know. But the aspect of pride, I do not necessarily see pride as a bad thing. It depends on what you're proud of. Like the aspect of, and I'll use myself as an example, the idea of being proud that you're born in a particular part of the world. While that can help for, as you can see from my picture, military service, it doesn't really do anything for you as a person. Because I was born in the United States, it doesn't give me anything, or there's no reason for me to be proud of it. It's just a fact of birth. That was the country that I happened to be born into. By the same token, and I'll touch briefly on this idea of like white privilege or whatnot, it's a horseshit idea. Because having pride in your skin color, you had no part in it. I had no say in what color skin I would have. So having pride that I am a particular skin color, to me, it's silly. And that, in a sense, it doesn't matter to me what color someone is, what color someone's skin is. It's nothing for you personally to be proud of. Because what does it actually get you? But that's where I think pride, especially when you get into the religious aspect, the idea that pride is somehow a sin, I don't understand that. Because when it comes to use the term the God figure, it's supposedly against pride, yet if you look at the Bible and you actually look at what is there, this God displays extreme pride in what it does. So it wants to condemn pride from everyone else, but from itself, that's okay. That's called a double standard or a hypocrite. And I would have an issue with anyone or any, especially if it's trying to proclaim itself as a magical or perfect being. If you're perfect and yet you're displaying hypocrisy, the only thing I could say, yeah, perfect hypocrite. But anger, okay, I can definitely see where that, and putting hate with anger, that's not necessarily true. You can have anger at an injustice, and that's not hate. You can have anger at a situation and not have hate. Hate is a different thing than anger, a different emotion than anger. Aggression is also different from hate. And antagonistic is maybe a subset of anger, or I wouldn't say hate though. That's where the level, emotion, and so forth, I question, as well as the scale log of, I don't know if that's supposed to be frequency and that all of those are on the same frequency. Maybe it's trying to say that. But I would also say, like I was, you can have anger at an injustice. And it is not the same as the anger at someone for, I guess you would say, bad reasons or what would be negative reasons. It's just sometimes anger can propel you to make a change in things that you wouldn't have had if you were not having an emotional reaction to what you were seeing. And part of what comes to my mind with that was, I'm sure with Martin Luther King Jr., there was a level of anger at what he was seeing in the society he was in that made him say, I have a dream. But instead of channeling that in a negative way, he'd let maybe an anger at an injustice motivate him to seeking a positive way to expressing that desire. And that brings me to the one underneath it, desire. Desire is not necessarily bad. And desire is simply wanting something. It's not, it can be sexual or, but the aspect of enslavement is way different from desire. And disappointing is also way different from desire or craving. So, just in the massive differences between things, I don't see where even it could be associated with being at the same frequency level, because I think other things would have to factor in. But you can look more at that, or other things might have jumped out at you that, but I'm not going to go through all of this because that would make this video way too long. But it's something that, this is something that gets also into the aspect of this frequency thing. And if anybody can help me understand, are the numbers that are associated to that, is there any evidence to go along with the numbers, or was it just number wise made up with people trying to give a list of what would be the lowest in the negative? And I question, like, shame being at the bottom, or below guilt, or below apathy, or even below anger. I would question, how was it determined that this particular thing got this particular number? I would like to see some scientific evidence that demonstrates why this particular word that we have, that's part of like the English language, why this is connected to this emotional vibration or vibrational frequency that someone can be at. And if there's not actual scientific evidence for it, is it really worth a damn? But I think in the aspect of, as something that people can consider, okay, fine. But I include it basically as food for thought, but I also question, and I would want to understand what is meant by ultimate consciousness, because to me that is a meaningless term. But this is something I had come across that I do feel is worth mentioning, people are poisoning their minds with negativity, and though we cannot see this negativity, it's just as fatal. I would, I, I can't prove that. That is a hypothesis that I would like to see some empirical data on. And their second tag in this, negativity is the poison that kills dreams. I can see that. And we need to stop it before it contaminates our lives. Negativity starts with negative thoughts. I would agree with that, but because negativity poisoning dreams, yes, absolutely. Because one of the things I dealt with from my parents, and I think they were trying to be more practical and realistic, not necessarily negative, but it comes across as negative, is if your child is interested in something like poetry or writing or a sport or an instrument, as a parent, the worst thing you can say to them, like when I mentioned to my dad about playing with the idea of writing poetry, he looked me dead in the face and he said, "Son, you're not a poet." That is a way of discouraging somebody and trying to take away any hope or aspiration that they may have. And it is something that I don't think he meant it in a hurtful way, but it was very hurtful. But this is something I had come across, and it does feel that at least I can see in myself where this bottom is absolutely true. That what are the benefits of positive thinking, or I would even say being a positive person? Because while I learned the behavior from my mom of being able to verbally tear someone a new asshole, I can do it. And the bad thing about it is when that side takes over consciously, I black out. I don't remember 99% of what I say. That is really bad because I can say things when I am in that frame of mind that I don't know where it comes from. But, and I had said this when I was late teens, early 20s. I told a friend of mine that when I am in that state, I can look at you and find the thing that hurts you the most. He challenged me on that, and I did. And the thing is, after I said it, he smiled and nodded, and he was like, "You got it," but I didn't remember what I said. The thing is, it's learned behavior. My mom was a pro at it. The thing is, I think she learned it from her dad. Now, to give you a bit of history on my family, because it does tie into this. My dad's parents, they're both dead now, but they lived to being late 70s, early 80s, which is basically a full life. My mom's dad, what would have been my grandfather, he died before I was born at the age of 50. He had contracted Lou Gehrig's disease, the very thing Stephen Hawking died from. But, excuse me, I don't know what my grandfather was like in life. Like I said, I never met the man. But based on what I had heard growing up, he was a Lutheran minister, but the aspects of verbal and maybe physical abuse would indicate to me he wasn't necessarily a nice person. That the aspect of minister and so forth wouldn't mean a damn, especially to me. Because I remember as a very young child, around 10 years old or so, having the thought of, if my mom is a representation of what the God is like, I want no part of the God. The ironic part is, and I realized this much later, was that I actually became an anti-theist before I was an atheist. I was actually an anti-theist when I was still a theist. If you can try to wrap your head around that one. It was very much, I guess you would say, like I had a love-hate relationship with my mother, I also had a love-hate relation idea with the God concept. But the idea of being negative affecting lifespan, I can definitely see that. Because people that are negative, well, before I get into that, let me mention with my mom. My mom, we didn't, she didn't have any health problems that we knew about up until she was about 48, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue one night, she ended up having grand mal seizures. She was rushed to a hospital and diagnosed with a brain tumor, prefrontal lobe, right in the front of the brain on the, I think it was the left side of her head, which would affect her right side of her body. They tried operating, and I don't know if they didn't get it or what, but they had given her 6 months to live. She lingered for a year and a half. And ironically, her dad died at 50 of Lou Gehrig's disease. She died at about 50 of a brain tumor. And as you can imagine, because of the turbulent relationship her and I had, when she died, I was basically, who cares? I remember my dad coming in my room and trying to wake me up, and I just wasn't getting up. And I remember him coming in and saying, "Are you going to come down and look at her body? They're coming to take her away." And I dragged myself out of bed, went down the stairs, looked at her, and I was like, and I remember thinking, yep, she's dead. And that was about all the emotion I had regarding that matter. It may sound cold, but at her funeral, my dad asked if I regretted things, and I had said, I can't change 1 second of the past, so why should I feel bad about it? And he looked at me like I was a cold-hearted son of a bitch. But it's the truth. I can't change fuck all about yesterday. So why, what purpose does it serve for me to be shoulda, coulda, woulda about yesterday? I can't change it. All I can do is look at it and determine, okay, moving forward, I'm going to do this differently. But it serves absolutely no purpose to look back at some event or some period of time and beat yourself up over something. Now, if something was extremely bad, like I remember, and this goes back to when I was a young child, there was one point as a very young child, I'm thinking under 10 even, a girl called me retarded and I punched her in the mouth. I felt bad about that for years. It has led to me at that time, I reached and made a decision of, okay, I'm not doing that again. It affected me so profoundly that it radically altered the rest of my life. And that is something that I do feel actions like that from a very young child, in a sense, it's understandable. Or you can more look at it as kids will be kids. It's when somebody is an adult, do they continue and persist in that type of behavior? Because that is where that type of person is harmful to others. And it's something that I do look at things like that. But the thing with this bottom chart and where it fits with my life, the idea of like depression, the only time I've had depression was when I was looking at things, basically things not working out in my life the way that I'd want. But overall, I don't feel depression. I just don't. And rates of distress, I would say that goes, for me, that goes along the lines of depression. No. Greater resistance to the common cold, I would agree with that. Because honestly, I rarely get sick. When I was in the Army and had to get the flu shot every year, I would get the flu every year. But since getting out of the Army in 2012, I've gotten the flu maybe a handful of times. And regarding COVID and so forth, I haven't had the flu at all or been sick at all. Basically, since I think 2019 would have been the last time I had any type of sickness. But yeah, I don't get sick very often. There was one point, and this is a bit of irony. I had gone to the VA because the Army had pretty much told me to. My platoon sergeant had said I needed to go to the VA for whatever reason. I went to the VA and basically found out I didn't qualify because I wasn't active duty long enough, type of thing. Even though I was National Guard, you have to have so much active duty time in order to qualify at the VA. But the truth of the matter is, the next day, I felt like I got hit in the head with a baseball bat. I ended up finding out I didn't go to the hospital right away. I'm stubborn. My girlfriend at the time and I were going to go out to eat, and as soon as we went outside and she saw the side of my head, she was like, "We're going to the hospital." And it was a good thing she said that because I ended up being in searing pain. I had shingles. And around that time when I had shingles, I ended up getting a sty that went from one eye, jumped to the other eye, and I had made the comment to her, "I feel like Job." And it was a funny comment because being an atheist and I feel like Job type of thing. It was a rough period for us because her being having had a kidney transplant, she couldn't touch anything that I touched because I was extremely contagious when I had shingles. And it was very rough on our relationship. But that was the only time. I missed about 3 months of drill because I had to be medically cleared before I could go back. But other than that, I don't get issues like that. And better psychological and physical well-being, I would say yes to that, but that also makes me question, what about somebody that has a chemical imbalance? it may be when somebody has a chemical imbalance, they may not be capable of being positive because of a chemical imbalance, or somebody that's like schizophrenic and so forth, because of the conditions either in their DNA or whatnot or in genetics. Things with that medical condition may prohibit positivity. I don't know. But, or those may be the exception, not the rule. Again, I don't know. But overall, better coping skills during hardships and stress. Yes, if you're more positive focus based, I can definitely see where that would have benefits with coping skills. But there's also something like this. I look at, like with the aspect of the male and female, I don't see any evidence of the male female dynamic. And just for those that may have missed that type of thing, I'm going to pull this back up because I do feel it is pertinent that this one, the idea that females are one octave higher than male tones, I call bullshit. Because nothing, like in this, there's no indication of gender having any effect, especially if the emotion would equate to the frequency. That's dealing with your emotions, not your gender. So the idea that because you're a particular gender that you're going to be inclined to be higher than another gender, I think that is a type of sexism. And that it is a fallacious premise. But the last thing is this, and yes, there are definite, and I'm sure you can even put others under the negative emotions and positive as well, but it does equate to those type of things. And I am wanting to say, just because you can try to put on a positive face, and there are times you have to, especially if you're doing any type of work in retail, which I have done, it does no good. Even working in retail, there will be people that will piss you off. It does you no good to flip out on somebody. It may feel good, but ultimately it is self-defeating. But there are times you have to, what would be termed, suck it up and contain your feelings. Like when I was in the Army and I was going through basic, I couldn't flip out. I guess I could have flipped on a drill sergeant, but that would have been a bad day for me. It's just, basically, it comes down to time and place. You have to learn to control and discipline yourself. And that is something that I feel young people do need, especially in our culture. They do need to learn more of the self-control. It's why I'm a very big advocate for young people joining the military. Because at the very least, going through basic and a 4 or 6 year military stint, it won't hurt you in the long run. Plus, if you have, I would advocate, if somebody's going to go the military route, job wise, one, you'll be taken care of medically and financially. The thing is, if you're going to do National Guard, basically take a bit of advice from me. I do not qualify at the VA, even though I did my 6 year term, because when my unit went to Iraq, I didn't go. I had a battle with the Army at that time over the subject of aliens. And I ended up getting medically cleared, but in that battle with the Army, I didn't have the active duty time that would have qualified me for being a quote unquote veteran. So I found out from the VA when I needed to have a hernia surgery done, because if you're going to do sit ups, and it's a good idea to exercise, but I had sergeants at one point standing over me yelling, breathe, because apparently I turned purple. Because instead of breathing like normal people do, I was holding my breath, which is not a smart thing to do. I ended up blowing out my navel. I had a hernia at my navel. And it was just, when I tried to get treated at the VA, I was told I didn't qualify. So I ended up having to get a job in the civilian world and having health insurance in order to be able to take the time off to get the hernia fixed. And ironically enough, and this is a bit of a funny, I was throwing truck at Walmart when I had a hernia. And there was one point I think it was pulling the rollers, and one of the women that were back helping, because we had a double truck, she looked at me and said, careful, you'll give yourself a hernia. I was like, I already got that. And I kept going. It just, for me, it was just a flippant, yeah, already got that. Basically, I'm moving. It didn't faze me. It stunned them. And it had people kind of, their mouth drops, because you don't expect, when you say something like that, for a person to that quick come back with, yeah, got that. But that was just how I was. Nothing, I didn't quit. I didn't back down. But it's something I would encourage anybody that's going to go into the military. Make sure you get your active duty time. Make sure, at the very least, that you go in. I would say do National Guard after a 4 or 6 year active duty, because then you get the active duty time in, and then you can go guard if you want to, an easier. Plus, there is a discipline level that can definitely be, being active duty would definitely help. But that's a different subject for a different time. But I hope this helps. I do feel that being positive overall is a better idea than being negative. Because one last thing before I close this, when I was a kid, I could feel the tension in the house just walking in the door. Nobody had to say a word to me. And you may have experienced this at a job, that the minute you walk in, you can feel the tension, or you can feel the negativity just radiating. Or by the same token, that I haven't experienced this one too much, but going in and feeling a positive or a light environment, that to me is more of a rarity. So it's harder for, I can't really think of what that would feel like, other than basically feeling no different. But the definite it definitely feels much different when it's negative. It does give a, it's not a, I don't even, I can't even put it into, to say heavier, it's not really anything that I can put my finger on. It's more of a feeling that I get going in somewhere. If it's a negative environment, I pick up on the negativity right away. That might be because of being hypersensitive to it with what I grew up with. I don't know. Just like the aspect of I became a heat casualty at basic, I am more sensitive to temperature now because of being a heat casualty back at basic training in 2006. I don't know if it's the same with the aspect of negativity. I would be curious, but I don't know. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comments section and give this a video a like if you like it, and talk to you later.